Same-sex relationships, heroin overdoses, and a special recording for a Beatle. Janis Joplin was a flamboyant singer who epitomized a hard-living rock and roll lifestyle, but there's a lot about her story that you don't know. Janis Joplin's will contained a somewhat unique provision that perfectly aligned with her hard-living lifestyle. She threw herself a party. In the last part of the will, Joplin instructed that her remains be cremated and set aside $2,500 from her estate to fund a party during her wake.
I don't know where you've been all week, but we've been at a party.
Joplin's wake was held at the Lion's Share, a music club in San Anselmo, California, and by all accounts, it was a blowout. Just before her death, Joplin was completing sessions for her second solo album, Pearl. The final track she laid down was the a cappella classic Mercedes-Benz, yet that wasn't her final recording. In his book, On the Road with Janis, Joplin's road manager John Byrne Cook wrote that Yoko Ono had enlisted Joplin and other LA rock stars to tape a message for John Lennon on his 30th birthday. Cook recalled hearing that recording when he and the members of Joplin's Full Tilt Boogie Band were listening to tapes from the Pearl sessions with producer Paul A. Rothchild. Cook wrote, "It is raucous and joyful. We hold the final happy birthday to you," and Janis says, "Happy birthday from Janis and Full Tilt Boogie. Happy birthday, Johnny." Lennon never met Joplin in person, but confirmed during an appearance on the Dick Cavett show that he'd received the tape. Joplin was linked with many famous men, including the Grateful Dead's Ron Pigpen Kiernan and actor Chris Christopherson. According to Joplin's friend Peggy Caserta, she'd also had sexual relationships with women, including Caserta. She made that assertion in her 1973 tell-all Going Down with Janis Joplin, depicting Joplin as a closeted lesbian who publicly pursued men to hide her sexuality. But Janis' sister Laura was skeptical. She told Classic Rock, "There are a number of people who have tried to present Janis as a frustrated lesbian, unable to be totally out front, but for the most part, they have not maintained it once they've really started looking at her life." Caserta, who died in 2024, later admitted to Vulture that the book was ghostwritten and seemingly disavowed its claims. She told the outlet in 2018, "I never even said that we were lovers in the lesbian sense. I never believed that." Sam Andrew, who played guitar in Big Brother and the Holding Company, held a more nuanced view of Joplin's sexuality. He told Classic Rock, "I think there's an element of truth in the fact that Janis hid her interest in women from all of us, but I just can't be sure. I have to say that she was quite interested in men, and genuinely so."
I like to be around men.
The fact that Joplin embraced the hippie counterculture's free love philosophy is hardly a secret. Years after her death, however, famed record executive Clive Davis revealed that she offered to have sex with him as a way to celebrate a record deal. He told The Guardian in 2014, "I think it was a little too formal and maybe corporate just to sign a document to say we'd be working together, so she asked to sleep with me to make it more personal. I took it as a big compliment, although I turned it down." While Joplin's fans may have been shocked by her death at age 27 from a heroin overdose, her friends, like Linda Graventees, likely weren't. In March 1969, Graventees visited Joplin's home and discovered her collapsed with her face turning purple from a heroin overdose. Graventees revived her and took her out walking, which very likely saved her life, at least temporarily. While speaking with Classic Rock, Joplin's longtime guitarist Sam Andrew recalled that the lure of heroin was far too seductive for the singer to resist. He explained, "What Janis liked about heroin was that it turned her mind off. She was a compulsive thinker, analyzer, and critic, and heroin enabled her to become soft, unfocused, intuitive, and receiving. She didn't like marijuana because it makes me think." Joplin's near-fatal overdose had apparently been a wake-up call. Her biographer, Holly George Warren, told NPR's Fresh Air, "She tried to kick heroin a few times. She finally did, almost for good, in 1970. Joplin decided to travel with Graventees to Rio de Janeiro to enjoy a drug-free journey through Brazil. That was when she met David Niehaus, an American backpacker who wasn't impressed by her fame. The two quickly fell in love. But when he returned with her to San Francisco, Niehaus was met with resistance from her drug-using friends, who felt he didn't fit into their scene. Niehaus eventually broke it off when Joplin began using heroin again during the Pearl sessions.
I told her, I can't do that part. I can't put up with that because it's killing you, and it broke my heart to see it.
But Joplin still held out hope that the relationship wasn't over. John Byrne Cook told The Telegraph she spoke of him as her lost love, and she still hoped he would come back after she got clean. Joplin didn't know it at the time, but the final batch of heroin she received had an exceptionally high purity. George Warren told Fresh Air, "It was much more pure than she'd ever used before, and her tolerance was down. She was by herself, overdosed, and died." Any hopes that Joplin would kick heroin were dashed when Peggy Caserta re-entered the singer's life in the fall of 1970, bringing heroin with her. Cook wrote in his book, "Peggy was banished from Janis's house in the spring along with the rest of Janis's druggy friends. When it comes to hard drugs, Peggy will be a conspirator with Janis, not a restraining force." While Joplin's death has long since been attributed to heroin, Caserta told Vulture that the singer didn't overdose. She went on to explain that after arriving at the scene of Joplin's death, LA's landmark hotel, to speak to the police, she concluded that Joplin tripped and fell. She told the outlet, "She hit her head on the night table and broke her nose. I figure the blood backed up in her throat and cut off her air supply. I'm sure the fact that she had heroin and other things in her system didn't help her any." Prior to her death, Joplin was trying to improve her work-life balance. While speaking with Classic Rock, the late singer's sister Laura revealed that Janis had been eager to slow down, saying, "It was hard to have relationships when traveling that much, and she was having ideas of trying to live a more balanced life in terms of the amount of time she toured." She'd also cut back on her drinking during the Pearl sessions, wary of how alcohol could damage her voice. As a result, instead of having a few drinks to relax after a day in the studio, she would use heroin, planning to quit entirely once the album was completed. Janis's brother Michael told Classic Rock, "There's certainly a lesson in her life for me. It's important to be true to yourself," as she said many times, and at the same time, what she didn't quite get as clearly, to realize that you have to live with the consequences of your behavior, and she died from them. While Joplin personified the rock and roll rebel, she also stayed in touch with her parents back in Texas. It's true that Joplin herself contributed to that defiant image, creating a mythology by telling her friends that she'd been on her own since the age of 14, but that never happened. In Janis' Little Girl Blue, filmmaker Amy Berg was provided access to never-before-seen letters that Joplin wrote to her parents. In one of those letters, she suggested what they could send her for a Christmas present, writing, "The only thing that I can think of that I want is a good all-around cookbook, Betty Crocker or any good one." While speaking to The Telegraph, Laura Joplin also recalled how the family had even driven to San Francisco to take in one of Janis's performances. She told the outlet, "I think she felt very supported and loved by her family. She didn't expect her parents to become hippies, but they still had a strong bond. We all did. They wanted more than anything for her to be a success."
How do you get along with your parents?
Pretty good.
Another aspect of the mythology that came to surround Joplin had to do with her hard-partying, drug-taking persona, Pearl. While Pearl was indeed one aspect of Joplin's personality, there was another side to her that was disciplined, hardworking, and ambitious. It was that facet of Joplin that intrigued biographer Holly George Warren, who told Texas Monthly, "Janis perfected an image of being this blues mama who sings what she feels. But I realized there was another part of her that people don't know. Behind the scenes, she was a hardworking musician who spent years honing her craft."
You know, I didn't set out to be a singer. That came after I was already a singer.
In her Fresh Air interview, George Warren explained that Joplin deliberately tried to keep that side of herself a secret, saying she didn't want people to know how hard she worked, just like she tried to hide the fact that she was a total bookworm and read books all the time. As she told Texas Monthly, that was evident in the recordings from Pearl sessions. She said, "But on these tapes, Janis is in charge. I mean, she's clearly running the show." 3 months before her death, Joplin embarked on a wild tour through Canada, dubbed Festival Express. In a scene from the 2003 documentary about the tour, Joplin is seen chatting with singer Bonnie Bramlett and lamenting, "Women, to be in the music business, give up more than you'd ever know. A home and friends, children and friends." According to her sister Laura, by the summer of 1970, Janis had become burned out from performing and recording, which fed into a cycle of drinking and drugs. Laura told Classic Rock, "There was a certain frustration in her about some aspects of her life." Her friends, in fact, recalled that she'd fallen in love with a new boyfriend, novelist Seth Morgan, and was seriously contemplating getting married and settling down. They also believed that she was ultimately deluding herself. Sam Andrew told Classic Rock, "I could see her going through a retirement, and it would turn out to be a temporary phase too. The picket fence doesn't exist, it's an illusion. People who want a safe harbor don't realize they would have to lose themselves completely to obtain that safety." In death, Joplin has made far more money for her estate than she ever earned when she was alive. Joplin's net worth at the time of her death was estimated to be $250,000. But her posthumous album Pearl was a huge hit that sold 4 million copies, breaking in $6 million. Then there was the 1973 release of Janis Joplin's Greatest Hits, which sold 7 million copies and generated an additional $10.5 million. Joplin's siblings currently control her estate, which continues to rake in money from album sales, streaming, merch, copyright usage, and much more. In fact, they sold her famed psychedelic Porsche at auction for a record-breaking $1.76 million in 2015. If you or anyone you know needs help with addiction issues, help is available. Visit the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP. 4357.